3,700 kilometers of open Pacific separate the nearest continent from a single dark speck of volcanic rock. For over 1,000 years, whoever stood here stood closer to the moon at night than to another crowd of people by day. The land is a study in contradiction. Soft grasslands rolling against a coastline where the sea detonates against jagged lava. Horses graze unbothered beside roads that lead, eventually, to nothing but more ocean. Visitors mistake the island's stillness for emptiness until they notice the carved stone faces along the coast. Weathered but upright, still keeping watch. This is not a story of a lost civilization frozen in stone, but of a living one that never left. This is Rapa Nui, Easter Island. The island's temperament is set by wind and salt long before it is set by anything human. 3 extinct volcanic cones, Teravaka, Poik, and Rano cow, anchor a roughly triangular landmass barely 60 square miles wide. And from any one of them, a person can see almost the entire territory their ancestors called home. Coastline to coastline, in a single turn of the head. There is no permanent river. Rainfall gathers instead in 3 crater lakes, their surfaces choked with reeds and in cisterns carved beneath the soil, because volcanic rock drinks water before it can pool. The subtropical climate swings between a humid, sun-scorched summer and a cooler, wetter winter. And the trade winds blow almost without pause, bending the reeds at Raraku and pulling salt spray far inland, where it settles on skin and leaves an old stone. Islanders speak of the wind the way people elsewhere speak of seasons, as something with moods, something to be read before a fishing trip or a drive along the coastal road. A shift from a steady southeasterly to a gusting northerly can close the harbour entirely, stranding boats on shore for a day or a week. And everyone on the water learns to watch the horizon the way a farmer elsewhere watches the sky before harvest. The soil itself, dark and porous, drains almost as fast as rain falls into it. So gardens are tended in small, carefully mulched plots rather than open fields. Each one a little battle won against rock. Living inside such exposure teaches a particular patience. Nothing here can be taken for granted. Not fresh water, not shade, not the calm required to bring a boat back through the surf at Hangaroa's tiny harbour. That patience, worn smooth over centuries, still shapes how people move through a single day. Before the story unfolds, we'd love to know, almost the entire population of the island lives in one town. Hangaroa, a scatter of low buildings and quiet streets on the sheltered western coast. And the arithmetic of that concentration changes everything about how life feels. A population in the thousands, not the millions, means a person's face becomes familiar within a season and known by name within a year. The woman selling papaya at the roadside stand recognizes the truck that passes twice a day. The man repairing an outboard motor outside his garage knows whose fishing boat that engine belongs to before he is told. Children walk to school past aunts, cousins, and family friends who all feel entitled to call out a greeting or a gentle correction. There is no anonymity available here, and largely no one wants it. A stranger's arrival, even a tourist's, is noticed, discussed, sometimes even welcomed into someone's evening. Privacy exists, but it exists inside a web of mutual awareness that outsiders often mistake for a small town anywhere, until they notice how far away the next small town actually is. Mornings at the market, the day's rhythm begins early, while the light is still pale gold over Rano Cow. With the opening of small shops and roadside stalls along the main street. Fishermen bring in the night's catch, tuna, wahoo, the reef fish locals call vidriola, and lay it out on ice at the edge of the harbour, where women haggle cheerfully over price while trading news about a cousin's new baby or a neighbour's leaking roof. Bakeries fill with the smell of fresh bread and empanadas, and the greeting iorana, offered to everyone whether known or new, threads through every transaction like a form of punctuation. Trucks loaded with produce trundle in from small family plots inland. Taro and sweet potato piled beside imported goods that arrived days earlier by cargo ship or plane, their labels sun-faded from weeks in transit. Dogs, nearly always a few, always unhurried, doze in doorways along the main street, occasionally lifting their heads as a scooter passes. At the small municipal market, handwritten price tags sit beside carved wooden souvenirs meant for tourists. The two economies, local and visiting, sharing the same few square meters of shade. There is no rush in these mornings. Even amid the exchange of goods and gossip, commerce here still moves at the pace of conversation, not convenience, and a 5-minute errand routinely stretches into 40 minutes of catching up. Where the island actually meets, if there is a single room where Rapa Nui society reveals itself most plainly, it is not a government office or a church pew, but the open-air gathering spots along Hanga Roa's waterfront, small bars, a handful of pool tables, benches facing the harbour where surfers wait out a flat spell. Here, generations mix without much ceremony. A retired fisherman debates land rights with a young hotel manager while teenagers pass a guitar between them, working through a half-remembered Rapa Nui melody. News of the island. A delayed cargo ship. A dispute over ancestral land. A coming festival moves through these spaces faster than any official channel. Decisions that will later be formalized in a community meeting are often first tested here, in the unofficial parliament of shared beers and passing conversation, where consensus is built long before anyone calls it a vote. Songs carved in stone and voice Rapa Nui identity survives less in archives than in bodies. In dance, chant, and carving passed hand to hand. The island's language, also called Rapa Nui, is a distinct Eastern Polynesian tongue, though most islanders now speak Spanish first. Efforts to keep the old language alive run through immersion schools and grandparents who insist on using it at home, refusing to let a millennium of vocabulary slip away in a single generation. The Orongo glyphs, carved into wooden tablets centuries ago, remain undeciphered, a script whose full meaning may be permanently lost, a reminder that not every inheritance survives intact. What does survive, loudly, is the sound of the scow drum in dance rehearsals, the haka-like stamp of feet during festival season, and wood carvers who still shape Moai kava figures and Reimiro pendants using techniques taught by a father or an uncle rather than a textbook. Every tattoo, every carved paddle, every chant memorized for a competition carries forward a version of the island's memory that no museum case could hold. Tourism, the Rapa Nui economy rested on a narrow but resilient base. Sweet potato, taro, and banana cultivated in rock gardens that used broken volcanic stone to trap moisture and nutrients in otherwise thin soil. Alongside chicken raising and coastal fishing for tuna and reef species, this was not abundance. It was calibrated survival on an island with little rainfall, poor soil fertility, and no large trees left for canoe building by the time Europeans arrived. Families maintained fishing rights over specific stretches of reef passed down for generations, and chickens were kept in stone coops still visible today, built solid enough to guard against theft during leaner years. Trade with passing ships, when it existed at all, was sporadic and secondary. For most of the island's history, whatever a family ate came from what a family or its immediate neighbors could coax from rock, sea, and sky within a single day's reach. Rapa Nui cuisine folds Polynesian tradition into Chilean and Latin American influence at nearly every table. Kuranto, the umu cooked feast of fish, chicken, pork, and root vegetables steamed beneath hot stones and banana leaves, remains the centerpiece of celebration, its smoky, earthen flavor unlike anything achieved on a stovetop. Tuna, caught that morning and served raw with lemon, onion, and coconut milk in a version of ceviche distinct to the island, appears at nearly every family lunch. Po, a dense pudding of mashed banana, pumpkin, and flour baked slowly in the same earth oven, closes out a meal the way dessert does anywhere else, though its texture and sweetness belong entirely to this place. Alongside these older dishes, imported staples, rice, bread, empanadas filled with Chilean-style beef, sit comfortably on the same table, evidence that food culture here is not a museum piece, but a living, blending, still evolving thing. To walk the island's interior is to move through an open-air record of everything that came before. The grass underfoot is short and springy, grazed by loose horses that amble across the road without concern for traffic. Wind carries the mineral smell of crushed volcanic rock, and nearer the coast, the sharper tang of salt and drying seaweed. At Rano Raraku, the quarry where most moai were carved, dozens of statues stand buried to their shoulders in centuries of sediment, staring inland with expressions worn soft by rain, as though caught mid-stride on a journey never finished. Farther along the coast, Ahu Tongariki's 15 restored moai stand shoulder to shoulder against the sunrise, their scale, some exceeding 30 feet counting the base, impossible to appreciate fully until a person stands at their feet and feels genuinely small. The single sand beach at Anakena breaks the black rock monotony with pale coral fragments and coconut palms planted within living memory, a favored spot for Sunday family picnics beneath a small cluster of restored moai facing the water. At Orongo, on the rim of Rano, stone houses cling to a cliff edge above a caldera lake and a plunging drop to the sea, the site of the old Birdman competitions, where wind pulls at clothing hard enough to make the vertigo feel earned, and where petroglyphs of the Birdman figure are still carved faintly into the surrounding rock, half erased by centuries of the same salt spray that first shaped this coast. Getting around the island today means choosing between a rental jeep on paved roads that circle much of the coastline, a scooter weaving past grazing cattle, or, increasingly rare but never absent, a horse saddled the traditional way, moving at a pace unbothered by any itinerary. Mataveri Airport remains the island's only connection to the outside world by air, its runway long enough to receive wide-body jets a handful of times a week, each landing an event significant enough that locals still glance up. Cargo arrives almost exclusively by ship, a journey of roughly 5 days from the Chilean port of Valparaiso, meaning a delayed vessel can mean weeks without a particular brand of flour or a spare part for a broken generator. Internet access, once nearly non-existent, now runs through a fiber optic cable connecting Rapa Nui to Chile's mainland network, a genuine transformation, though bandwidth remains costly and connection speeds slower than travelers from larger economies often expect. The island has not simply adopted modern infrastructure. It has adapted modern infrastructure to fit an island's particular constraints. What emerges from all of this? The airport runway beside the ancestral quarry, the fiber optic cable beside the earth oven, the hotel lobby beside the family fishing boat, is not a contradiction so much as a working balance, tested daily and rarely resolved for good. Rapa Nui has not chosen tradition over modernity, nor modernity over tradition. It has instead built a life that requires holding both at once, using whichever one solves the problem in front of it on a given morning. A fisherman checks the tide with an app on his phone, then heads to a reef his family has worked for 5 generations. A teenager posts a video from Tapati training to social media before dawn, dressed for a role in a ceremony older than any nation currently claiming the island. Neither gesture cancels out the other. Both are simply what living here now actually requires. Tupul's children on the island grow up bilingual by necessity, moving between Spanish in the classroom and in a growing number of immersion programs, Rapa Nui at home and in cultural workshops designed specifically to keep the language from disappearing with the generation that still speaks it fluently. Many young people compete in youth divisions of Tapati, training for months in canoe racing or traditional dance under the informal mentorship of aunts, uncles or older cousins who once competed themselves. A soft, communal rite of passage rather than a single formal ceremony. But higher education past a certain level exists only on the mainland, and a great many young Rapa Nui leave for Santiago or Valparaiso to study, work, or simply see more of the world than one island can offer. Some stay away permanently, building lives in Chile's cities. Many return, drawn back by family, land claims, or a pull toward home that islanders describe less as sentiment than as gravity. The tension between the outside world's opportunity and the island's rootedness runs through nearly every family with children old enough to choose. Daytime on the island belongs to labor, fishing before the heat rises, tending small gardens of taro and sweet potato, driving tourists along the coastal road, restoring ahu platforms under the supervision of the Mahu Henua indigenous community that now manages the national park. By late afternoon, the pace visibly loosens. Families gather on porches as the light turns amber over the water, and conversation stretches out with no fixed endpoint. Evenings often end at the waterfront, where fishermen clean the day's catch as surfers ride the last light out of the water, and a guitar inevitably appears somewhere nearby. Night falls fast and complete, largely free of light pollution. And on clear evenings, the Milky Way stretches directly over Ahutahai's silhouetted moai, a nightly reminder, visible to anyone who simply steps outside, of exactly how far from anywhere else this small piece of land actually sits. No river has ever crossed this island, and no spring reliably breaks its surface. So every drop of fresh water a family uses has to be caught, stored, or coaxed up from underground. Rain gathers in the crater lakes at Rano and Raraku. Their surfaces so thick with reeds that from a distance they look more like meadows than open water, and it seeps down through porous volcanic rock into a lens of groundwater that islanders have tapped for generations through natural caves and hand-dug wells. Many older homes still keep a concrete cistern beside the kitchen door, a holdover from decades before piped water reached every household, filled by gutters that funnel rain off corrugated rooftops during the wetter winter months. A modern desalination plant now supplements the supply for the growing town of Hanga, built out of necessity as tourism multiplied the number of showers, toilets, and swimming pools, drawing from a system designed for a fraction of the current population. Even so, water use here carries a different weight than it does on the mainland. A long dry stretch is still discussed the way farmers elsewhere discuss drought, because on an island this size, there is no next valley to borrow from. Almost nothing native to this island walks on four legs. Before human arrival, Rapa Nui had no land mammals at all. No snakes, no native amphibians, none of the wildlife that shapes daily life on a typical Pacific island, and everything with fur that grazes the grasslands today, from the horses that wander loose along the roads to the cattle kept by ranching families, arrived on ships within the last few centuries. The island's true natives fly or swim. Sooty terns once nested by the tens of thousands on the tiny offshore islet of Motunui, and the perilous swim-out to collect their first egg of the season formed the entire basis of the old Birdman competition at Orongo, a tradition literally built around the island's seabirds. Frigatebirds trace slow circles above the cliffs, red-throat pouches flaring during courtship season, while red-tailed tropic birds nest in crevices along the southern coastline, trailing long white tail feathers behind them in flight. Offshore, the water tells a different story than the bare grassland above it. Reef fish in bright, improbable colors shelter around lava formations. Spinner dolphins occasionally ride the bow waves of fishing boats returning to harbor. And green sea turtles surface periodically near Anakena's beach. Since 2018, a vast marine protected area encircling the island, one of the largest of its kind in the world, has restricted commercial fishing across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of ocean. An effort to safeguard shark populations, tuna stocks, and deep water species that had drawn increasing pressure from industrial fleets passing through the open Pacific. On land, the most distinctive survivor is smaller and easy to miss, an endemic gecko, quick and thin as a fingernail, darting between volcanic rocks in a landscape that, before deforestation stripped away its ancient palm canopy centuries ago, once sheltered a far richer web of insects and bird life the island has never fully recovered. Moths and beetles found nowhere else on Earth still cling to what native vegetation remains near the crater lakes. Easy to overlook, but closely tracked by the handful of biologists who study the island's fragile inventory of endemic species. Chickens, too, carry an outsized place in island history. Stone coops still scattered across the countryside, built solid enough to survive centuries of weather and theft, once represented one of the only reliable protein sources on an island with no large game to hunt. Conservation efforts today extend beyond the surrounding ocean. Local biologists and Mau Henua rangers work to control invasive species, feral cats that prey on nesting seabirds, rats that raid eggs, and attempt to give the island's remaining wildlife room to recover. One of the quieter battles being fought here alongside the more visible ones over land and heritage.